Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and I've got Jeff Rutt with us, as usual. Say hello to the people, Jeff.
Hello to the people.
And we have a very special double the joy today. We have Bob and Peter Fioretti. And now, we have a lot of people that run family businesses, okay? Usually they don't last as long as you guys do. So one thing we got to learn today is how do two brothers work together for so long? That's the burning question for me. We got a lot of others, but these guys started a company. It's a real estate company called Mountain Funding and Mountain Real Estate Capital over 30 years ago. And apparently they're still close enough to be on a Zoom together. So thank you to Bob and Peter for being with us today.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff, kick us off.
Yeah, Bob and Peter, let's get started by, there's got to be some fun stories of growing up in the Fioretti household, especially tell us about, any entrepreneurial instincts early on, any spiritual formation, any illegal job, businesses during your junior high years. Yeah, tell us about those early years in the Fioretti household.
Go ahead, Pete. You got all those.
Yeah, I have a few. Well, okay, so I'll start. So our household, we grew up in sort of, middle class America. I was born in the Bronx, New York. Bob was born in Newark, New Jersey. And when I was 5 years old and Bob was 3, we got great news from our parents. We're going to move into the rural area of New Jersey, Montville, New Jersey. At that time, it was all farmland. It was, it was really nice and rural. And so we moved out there, and we moved into a huge home. It was like 1,800 square feet. Okay. And this was like a palace. And all the homes in our entire community were 1,800 square feet, right? And so we thought this was just wonderful. My dad was, at the time, he was a very hard worker, worked for a large corporation, several large corporations during his life. And he would leave, first thing in the morning, and he would come home, 6 o'clock at night, and we'd all be ready for him, and we'd have dinner together. He was very strict, we had a very disciplined family. My mother, in the meantime, made sure we didn't get in trouble during the day when my dad was out to work, and we all had jobs early on, delivering newspapers or cutting lawns or shoveling snow or whatever that was. So I would say, we grew up thinking we were sort of like everyone else grew up. Nothing too special, hardworking, focused, school, played sports. And so that was it. Bob, what would you add to that?
I think you hit most of it. And we were just very family centered. So whatever we were involved in, there was always family around. Whether it was a sporting event, whether it was a school event, it didn't really matter. There was aunts, uncles, grandparents showing up to support us or champion us, or whatever we might be doing. So that's certainly one thing that.
Yeah, in fact, every other Sunday we would go visit one set of grandparents.
That's awesome.
And then the next Sunday, we had Italian Sunday dinner. We would go to Harlem to other set of grandparents.
That's
and
awesome.
So we would go back and forth, and we would see those sets of families. so there were three brothers, me, Bob, and our younger brother, John. And, we were 2 years apart, two grades apart. And we were competitive with each other. We sort of picked on each other. We ganged up on each other. Um, we got in trouble with each other. We got each other in trouble. And so, we had a very strong brotherhood, even though the three of us were extraordinarily different from each other. Three different personalities, um, you know, three sets of different interests, but we were still close. By the way, we didn't go on any fancy vacations. Our big vacation was we drove down to the Jersey Shore once a year and stayed in a motel, for a week. And that was it. We went to the beach and then at the end of the week, we drove back home, and that was our big vacation.
So
We-
very family oriented, a lot of structure. Talk about the first signs of You guys are very entrepreneurial. What were some of the first signs of the entrepreneurialism coming out in the Fioriettis?
Well, it was about fourth grade, and a new 7-Eleven opened up from our home. It's maybe 3/4 of a mile from where our home was, and so I go into that 7-Eleven, and at the time, if you recall, Bazooka gum was very, very popular, and the Bazooka gum sold for a penny each. And I noticed that you could buy a bag of Bazooka gum for a half a cent each, like a whole bag, right? So I say, Mom, I'd like to buy the whole bag of Bazooka gum. And so she buy the bag of Bazooka gum. I pay for it with my savings. And I went to school, and I would sell the Bazooka gum for 2 cents each. And so, you got a 4x margin there. And then sometimes my friends wanted the Bazooka gum, but they didn't have the sort of 2 cents on them. So then I'd say, okay, I tell you what, I give you 2 Bazooka gums. And then at the end of the week, you pay me 5 cents, because I'm going to finance your purchase. So before you know it, I was sort of like a 5th grade loan shark.
That definitely qualifies as illegal, Jeff Rudd.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, how many entrepreneurs that have been super successful, like Bob and Peter, started in the gum business? It's just like a trend we've seen.
It's a trend.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
The candy at school. I don't know if they still do it. They probably still do. Okay. The prices are different, but the margins are probably the same. Okay.
But this is a new level, though. Peter added the financing.
That's pretty strong.
The financing piece. I mean, those are payday rates right there.
I had written down a question to ask later about like how your things you did as a kid kind of form, like, you see these parallels. Okay. There's clearly real estate funding and investment. Okay. So clearly there's foreshadowing happening here as we get into the business stuff. And I know we got more of the early years to cover. So
yes. So let's go into
this. I think Pete parlayed that into then having a little bit of a bookie thing going on in middle school, because he was such he's always been great with numbers, and so I think he had his own little side bookie deal going until either the school or our parents found out about it, and that created some challenges.
Shut it down.
I thought maybe that's why you had to move to the suburbs. We have to escape the authorities in the city.
Well, we got a lot more stories to hear about. But walk us, Pete and Bob, walk us through the school years. Take us through the what's happening in the Fioretti family.
Well, during the school years, we were forced to focus on hard work. We're forced to working on our education. Right? We had to get good grades. If we got A's, we got like $1 an A. And if we didn't get A's and B's, we got whacked somehow. We got hit with something. So it was we were incentivized to do well in school. And we worked hard at sports. And so, our parents and our grandparents had a lot to do with how we, the values that we, focused on and formed without knowing it, without it being forced upon us. It's not like we had a family meeting. What are our family values? Oh no. We knew hard work, focus on education, tell the truth was a big one, right? Always tell the truth, and work hard. So those were the family values. And like I said, if we did well at those, we got rewarded. If we didn't, at those times, it wasn't illegal for a father to like smack their sons or kick them in the butt. And so that's what he did. And that's sort of how that's how we grew family values. We went to church every Sunday. My mom and dad grew up Catholics, strong Catholics. They went to Catholic schools. And so we went to Sunday school and we went to church every Sunday. And that, again, those were the days where you had to dress up. We dressed up, oftentimes with ties, even as kids, and our Sunday best. And then, then Sunday we came home, and then we went to one of the grandparents or one of the other grandparents, and it was like a Sunday tradition. So, we had a lot of tradition in our family. Holidays were always spent with the big families. Sundays, you just got what our Sundays were. And so, and from that came a lot of family values without knowing it, without.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's definitely a strong formation. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure there's a lot more stories there, but walk us in through your post high school education, your formation of your families, and then your starting of the next level of entrepreneurship.
So I was a senior in high school, and I just couldn't wait to get out of New Jersey and the Northeast. So I applied to all these colleges in California where they had, pretty beaches and pretty girls, And then I applied to schools in Florida that had the same. And then my dad informed me, you're not allowed to go to school that's not driving distance away because it's too expensive and we won't see you enough. So you gotta go to schools that we can drive to. Okay, a little disappointing. Well, one of those schools I applied to was Lehigh University and got accepted. That was only about an hour and a half drive from the home. And then 2 years later, brother Bob applied to Lehigh University, got accepted, and went to Lehigh. And then 2 years later, brother John didn't want to be part of that clan, applied to another school. But a year later, applied to Lehigh and got in.
Wow.
And so all three of us ended up at Lehigh, all at the same fraternity. So we are fraternity brothers. And
Wow.
I was so fortunate enough that when brother Bob pledged at ATO, I was the pledge master. So I got to torture all of the pledges, including my brother. And that was a lot. But what was cool is we sort of our brotherhood continued with us all going to Lehigh and all being ATOs and all being part of another tribe of really cool people at Lehigh and brothers at ATO.
Bob, what
That's
was that
awesome.
experience like for you?
Yeah, it was well, obviously it was interesting having Pete be our pledge master. And I never even heard of Lehigh before brother Pete applied, and I wasn't going to apply. And my dad just said, "Hey, it's an easy application and it's only $50. Why don't you just fill it out?" And one of those defining moments,
Yeah.
because I think that between our family values and the values that we got at Lehigh, um, really set the seeds of giving back.
Mm.
And I always remember being in a classroom or a seminar at Lehigh, and some super successful person from the business world or from government or somewhere would come and talk to us. And I was always wondering why that person who was running $1 billion company would take time off to come visit a classroom, or to come visit students. And I just came to realize that most of those people felt some level of gratitude for somebody who had helped them along the way. And this was one of their ways of giving back. So it was not only financially, but it was really personally, of coming in and sharing their stories like we're sharing here, the ups and downs. And so that was very profound for us at Lehigh. And that carried on where Pete's first investor was his fraternity brothers and Lehigh alumni who invested in the real estate business and were his advisors, our advisors. And so that continued on. And as we gave back, Lehigh became part of that thread of the early years of where we started giving back.
I think that's really interesting that you observed that. Were you kind of aware of that at the time as a student of what they were doing, or did that kind of come to you later? As you,
I think a combination of both, Jeff.
Yeah.
I think I know that I was in awe, right, of
Yeah.
who was standing in front of me speaking.
Yeah.
It's like you see this person on a commercial, or you read about them in a famous book, right? And here they are, and at the end, it was like, okay, and if you have follow up, you can call my secretary, and could set up a meeting or questions, right? Or so it was so personable that it just really was impressionable.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, Pete, so you get out of school. Do you go get like a corporate job, or do you get right into the entrepreneurial thing?
No, I first got a corporate job on Wall Street. Again, through our ATO and Lehigh relationships, I got a fantastic job in a training program as a Wall Street banker. So off to Wall Street I went, and they were, offering me a very nice salary, a whooping 23,000 a year,
Oh, yeah.
which was a lot, right? But wasn't enough really to afford a really nice apartment in Manhattan. So, investigating, I found that I get an apartment, a really nice apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey, for half the price.
Yeah.
And me and another fraternity brother of mine, who was also in a banking program in New York, we could afford this, and we loved it. So we got this apartment in Hoboken. And then
It's not bad. It's just a ferry ride.
Well, no. It's a PATH train.
Oh, really?
It's a PATH train. And the PATH train was
There
25.
were no ferries back then.
Oh,
There
okay.
were no
Okay.
ferries back.
I got you.
This is back in the days where they didn't have cell phones. We didn't have emails. We sort of dialed on the phone.
Send a pigeon, a trained pigeon,
Right.
carrier pigeon,
So-
to say, "Hey, I'm going to be late to work tomorrow."
So this is when Hoboken was really a rough place to
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
But more and more people like us were forced to live there. And so what happened was, every day I get on the PATH train, go to work, come back on the PATH train, and I would just notice, there are more and more people who look like me getting off at the Hoboken PATH train stop. Suit and tie, or females who were professionally dressed. Just more and more people would get off the PATH train. So what happened was, I said, I've got to invest here. Let me go buy a condo. And so I looked into condos, and, I was going to buy a condo and then rent out the rooms to my friends. And, I just did the simple math. I think I could make a little bit of money on this. That's when condos were going for 100,000 a piece.
Yeah.
Um, and then what happened is my landlord put his building up for sale. And the building was available for $170,000. So, let me see. So I negotiated a price of $160,000. Like Bob mentioned earlier, I went to my fraternity brothers and Lehigh alumni. By the way, I had $5,000. That's all I had. So I put up 5,000, and then I've got 11 other of my friends and ATO brothers put up 5,000 each. So we had $60,000. I went to the local bank, got a $100,000 loan, and bought the building. At that time, I admit, I knew absolutely nothing about real estate. Never took a real estate class. Never owned real estate before. And I've just decided I was going to figure it out, So at that time, I just started to learn, started calling people who were in the real estate business. Again, Lehigh alumni, took classes at NYU and Columbia, and just started learning about this stuff. And then all of a sudden, I learned about this thing called a joint venture. And this joint venture idea seemed fascinating. So I said, okay, I went to a local builder and I said, let's do a joint venture. I have the building. You know how to do construction and get financing. Let's renovate this building and convert all of these apartments, there's only 4 of them, into condos. And so that's what we did. And so that was very successful. All 12 of us made a lot of money. And then we rolled it into 2 more larger properties. And at that time is when I said to Brother Bob, he was working for a family construction business.
Oh.
I need some help over here, so why don't you come over here and help with this, real estate idea? And to make a long story short, 3 years later, we owned and controlled $200 million worth of real estate.
Wow.
In Hoboken, New Jersey City. We kept being successful, rolling that success into more properties, being successful, learning, making mistakes, right? Learning from our mistakes and, rolling it into the next properties.
Yeah.
Again, making mistakes, learning from the previous mistakes, and continually getting better at what we were doing. And so that's how we ended up in the real estate.
That's so good. Hey,
and Bob, you didn't take any real estate classes before we got into business, right?
No, it was all learning on the fly. And then, like you said, while we were learning on the fly, taking classes, and I joined the Builders Association, and I was learning from meeting other people that were in the industry. And if you remember back then, there was only 3 people in the entire New Jersey Builders Association that was doing any type of urban development. It was a foreign concept. Mm-hmm. And so, we were on the forefront of that. And, the old days, the joke was that New Jersey was the armpit of the U.S. and Hoboken was the armpit of New Jersey. And it was not really seen very favorable. And now it's become one of the greatest cities in the country.
No doubt. That's amazing.
So before we move to the next area, I think, Jeff, we've got to get something in the title here that talks about leveraging Bazooka bubblegum into a $5,000 seed money to leverage to a $200 million business. Somehow we got to tie all that together.
I think the theme is pay your kids 200 pieces of bubble gum for every A. That is the key to every kid's success. Okay, this is the key, and make them do the math. But Bob, you were working for a construction company. Was that just by coincidence? I mean,
it was just a fill. Yeah, it was just a fill time. one of our cousins in New York. I was one of the few people who graduated Lehigh without a job offer. And so I just picked up summer job to make some money because I was uh, headed on a 7-week trip to see the western part of the United States with a fraternity brother. And then Pete and another fraternity brother who we had partnered up with said, "Hey, why don't you, come work a little bit with us?" And I remember uh, learning how to fix toilets, digging ditches, scraping walls, painting, any grunt work that there was. It became my responsibility. And
Okay, I'm going to project something here. I don't know the answer to this question, but just in the short time we've had together, I'm kind of going to go out on a limb here and say Pete makes a lot of promises that you got to fulfill. I have a feeling this has been happening for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah,
How far off base am I, Pete?
absolutely.
yeah,
And Jeff did that. I said, "How hard is this?" And he would say, "Oh, geez."
yeah. So 6 months later, then Pete and his partner ended up. I had first got a job offer to move somewhere else, and they said, "Why don't you stay? And you're going to work hard, but there'll be opportunity down the road." And 6 months later, they offered me a 10% piece of the business, and so then I had to figure out how to buy in because I didn't have any money. So my grandparents offered me a loan to buy into the business, and you know, that's what started even more of a partnership from that perspective. And that was March of 1985.
Man,
Wow.
that's pretty amazing, though. I mean, I think everybody's listening to this. You know, not having grown up in an Italian family, but there's Italian New York families are kind of famous in America. We all have kind of a stereotype, and I think I mean some are good, some are less good, I guess, just like every family. But I think the way you describe, Pete, the closeness of your family, and at the top I was saying, like, how do you guys work so long together so well? And I'm sure there's been fights, and maybe we could tell a setback story along the way. I mean, there's always '08 in our lives in real estate, but I mean, maybe talk about how that, as kids and having a close family, has that helped you guys work together for so long? Pete, you mind telling your perspective?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because again, when we grew up, we had a lot of fights. We had a lot of
Of course,
disagreements. We got in a lot of trouble and blamed each other for it.
right.
We saved each other's butts from getting in trouble. I mean, even things like, as soon as I became 18 and I could buy liquor, I'd buy beer and give it to Bob. We sort of, work the deal. We work deals together, right?
Right.
And so, and we, and it's not like we always agreed with each other. It's not like we always got along. We didn't, and so we worked through that sort of those challenges. So let me tell you about the first challenge. So
Yeah.
well before, um, um, 2008, when just in 1991, the saves and loan debacle. And so we thought, well, we did have very conservative debt on all of our projects. I don't know, 60% loan to value.
Right.
I
Not
mean,
bad.
it was fairly conservative. And we had 5 lenders. And what happened is all 5 got taken over by the RTC. They all went
Yeah.
bankrupt, every one of them.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
what happened was the RTC said, your loan's called, pay the loan back. And we said, well, what do you mean?
With
On the loan?
what?
And they said, well, we're the U.S. government. We get to call loans.
Right.
I'll make a long story short. We tried to work out deals with the banks. Bob and I had to file bankruptcy.
Wow.
We had to give it all back. We were, by the way, for one, we had so much success that I was already retired. I hired a president to do the
Right.
operations. Bob still handled all the marketing and investor stuff, and I was retired. And we had to give it all back. Both of us, we had to get it all back, every cent, from whatever it was to goose egg.
Yep.
And so that was in 1993.
Yep.
So it was tough. And we said, okay. I remember we had to, give up our homes. We had to
Wow.
give up anything worth anything, right?
How old were you at that time, Pete? How old were
I
you?
was 30. I was 33. Bob was 31.
Mhm.
Okay. It was a huge setback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, setback. And I think the both of us would say we learned more from that than any part of the success that led up to that point.
Yeah.
We learned who our true friends were.
Oof.
We learned about our own character. Learned about telling the truth during tough times. We learned about the embarrassment of what transpired, and we learned to live with absolutely nothing after we had everything, material, and it was tough.
Yeah, I always remember one of the banks came to us and offered us a deal that if we were willing to lie, they would vote in our favor and not put us through the bankruptcy.
Wow.
And we were faced with that choice, and we talked it over. It didn't take very long, and basically said, "F you." We could go bankrupt, but we got to live with ourselves and our integrity the rest of our lives. And but that was a carrot that was dangled in front of us to certainly test us, right, as to where we might go when we were down on our knees.
Yeah.
Wow. And there's only kind of two reactions to that, right? When you're in that situation, do you maybe a little of both. I mean, probably a couple of fetal position evenings, but or you can kind of fight and learn and get better. And so obviously you did the latter. But can you just I'll spend all the time on this, but what did the recovery kind of look like? I mean, you kind of knew how to do deals, but how do you get out of that pit?
Well, we saw an opportunity. We said, okay, guys like us don't have money, don't have liquidity.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate before the debacle happened to us, we got mostly all of our investors out with profits. We sort of took all of our profits, paid out all the investors, personal investors. So all the personal investors were thrilled. And then we were stuck with the bag and we took the hit. And they didn't take the hit. So we took care of our investors. We took care of our vendors. We took care of our friends and family. Well, they sort of remembered that. And so in then 1993, we said, okay, let's now raise money from the same investors, and let's fund these builder developers who we know are good, who we know are trustworthy, but got caught in a similar situation to us, and let's help them buy their properties back from the RTC at cents on the dollar. Let's help them restructure their debt. Let's use our capital to help them for a win-win situation. So that's when we started Mountain Funding, which was a private lender providing capital to builders and developers we knew in the tri-state area who were really good at what they did, just got caught in the same situation as we did. And then that started, Mountain Funding started small, started in the tri-state area, and then grew successfully with institutional investors. And then eventually we went national in 97. And then became one of the largest private lenders in the country. We financed several billion of transactions until 2006.
What's amazing, I think this is such a cool line to connect, Bob, from what you said about, not taking the bait from the banks, about just being honest, and Pete, what you said about your parents, like, tell us the truth, even if it's bad news. Like we all tell our kids, like, it's better if you just tell the truth, even if it's bad news, we can deal with it, right? But same thing, like this sort of honesty, and like probably painful honesty, with your investors too. You know, I
Right.
mean, I'm sure they wanted to make more, but you did whatever you could for them, and that gave you the relationships to have capital. I mean, I'm still amazed by like getting 11 or 12 people with $5,000. I mean, that's just as much work as getting 5 million from
Oh,
12
yeah, it
people.
was. Yeah, because it was the only $5,000.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
the same process. So this sort of honesty with your investors kind of created that opportunity, you know? So it's kind of like, I don't know, I just keep thinking God honored the honesty, you know, it seems like.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so it grows. Now, how do you work the philanthropy in? I know you guys have a family foundation and stuff like that. What is that? How do you think about, is the philanthropy done all kind of completely from the profits of the business? Is it part of the business? How does that integrate or not? And how do you guys integrate your giving and not?
Well, let's not necessarily equate philanthropy with writing checks.
Great point.
I think it all started when we're in Hoboken. I mean, we grew up in a nice, suburban neighborhood where there was no poverty. There was absolutely no, we didn't see any poverty until we really graduated college. We didn't see anything. And then we're in Hoboken and we saw poverty
Yeah.
and we helped. We helped those who were less privileged. And both Bob and I love children, right? So, like, for example, Bob coached a Little League team. And let me tell you, or Little League team, that was a lot less about baseball and a
Yeah.
lot more about coaching these kids who didn't have fathers
Yeah.
or who couldn't eat or got kicked out of school or were offered drugs. And Bob was a father figure to them and a mentor to them. And so it wasn't about writing a check to, a charitable organization. It was us using our resources,
Yeah. Time and talent. Not
time and
just
talent.
yeah.
Every once in a while it costs money, right?
Yeah, sure.
It started with time and talent. And that's how we got into it. We also started contributing a lot of our time and talent back to Lehigh.
Yeah.
Board of trustees, advisory boards, going back, like, Bob said, those successful guys who came back and helped the younger kids. We did that,
Right.
right?
That's a great, yeah.
Yeah, we
Such a
created
great
the Lehigh Gold Coast Club, which was a new alumni club, and it became the largest club in the entire country within 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
So that's where it started. It started back in Hoboken when we,
Yeah.
we didn't really have much and we gave back time, talent, and then we just wanted to sort of fix things that really bothered us. So that's
Yeah.
where it started, and that's when it just continued. Whether we had
Yep.
money or we didn't have money, the giving really didn't slow up.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think you're? I love this picture of you going to the grandparents and stuff. I mean, and Jeff and I talk about his first question to me today was, how are the grandkids? You know, like we're kind of everybody with grandkids is obsessed with their grandkids. But so I think it's cool that you're around your grandparents as kids. It seems like you had a pretty cool family situation. I know everybody fights and there's nothing's perfect, but I always find it interesting, like how your upbringing kind of maybe affects how you see what breaks your heart and where other kids maybe don't have that same structure. Is that a fair parallel that you guys see? That's something that breaks your hearts? Bob, how do you feel about that?
yeah, I at one level it's kind of odd, right? Because you think everybody grows up that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And then because that's all you knew.
Exactly.
That's what Pete shared earlier. And then all of a sudden your bubble bursts and you come to reality and see that not everybody has a family or has a family where there's love or kindness, or there was education or whatever there might have been to be supportive. And so I think that given that we had a good foundation, right, we were able to offer that to others.
Yeah, that makes such a big difference. That guys, before you move on though, we gotta go back to the story that we talked about before we started the recording. Bob, I don't know if you want to share it, but there's another example here, folks, that of generosity at a time. I know Hope International, this was very small, and these guys, Bob, tell the story about around the kitchen table when Hope International was an idea, and you guys got a chance to just spend time in our humble abode.
Yeah, so got to meet Jeff through the gift of a builder 2020 club through the National Association of Home Builders. Brother Pete and I were headed out to Pennsylvania for a fun brother adventure, flying Italian fighter pilot planes, and on the way, Jeff had invited us to dinner at his house to share his vision of hope, and that's was the initial part of this friendship, and not until many years later did we hear. First, we knew that there was early success with your vision, Jeff, around that dinner table, but that as time went on, you like our building story a little bit. You were doing great, and then you learned that the model was broken and didn't work, and that failure set you up for something so much greater. And we've got to witness that for 25 years, as that initial vision to a vision now where you're impacting millions of people around the world.
Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you for your not only your generosity at those in those early years, but your faith in something that was not able to be seen.
Right.
And yeah, you believed in the vision of it. And the embarrassing part for me at that dinner was you guys were so gracious and so generous also with bringing a bottle of wine to the meal, which I tried to open. And growing up in a Brethren and Mennonite background, didn't even know how to get the cork out of the bottle, and it looked like I was about to break something, and I think Eric Thurman was there, and he said, "Jeff, let me help you out here."
Okay,
and
I already have a Netflix. We got to pitch this to Netflix. The Italians meet the Mennonites.
Yeah,
I mean, this is like a Netflix. I mean, this is.
and it was just one big happy dinner.
We're sitting around the table, we're
laughing,
Pennsylvania, sitting around the table, and we're intention was to talk about home building stuff and this and that, and Jeff started sharing his vision and said, okay, we need some wine for this story, and then he didn't open up the wine, and then okay, that's all right, we'll give him a pass, and then eventually we said, all right, Jeff, we'll contribute to this crazy idea you have.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And you know what's interesting? Still today, our number one criteria to give is based on our faith in the leader. You know what? It's not the idea, it's the leader. If we really have confidence and faith in the leader, check. So it's the leader first, and it's the what second. And I'm just thinking about it. It started with you because you had no idea what you were doing, but you had
no idea.
And you had a vision, but you didn't have it's not like you had a plan, know?
Right. Yeah.
It was all.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your belief and thank you for your generosity. And it's continued. God's blessed you in so many ways, and your success in your business and the things that you've supported through your generosity in many ways. The last thing I want to say, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jeff, as you want to continue the journey here. But I love the continuity of both of you hearing from business leaders at Lehigh, and now you saying, now I'm going to take that baton and I'm going to give back by sharing with students about your success and how you've been able to carry on that tradition. It's just another form of generosity.
Yeah.
Very true. But man, I know we could do a lot of stories because we got both of you here. It's a real treat. Thank you guys again for doing this. But we always try to wrap these things up with just a practical tip, somebody behind you on the journey. and I know the journey continues for all of us, including you guys, of course, but I'm just trying to, we sometimes we think about, maybe somebody's having some real estate development success. Maybe they're, 40 years old. They're on the treadmill listening to this deal, and they're like, hey, maybe it's going okay, but they're trying to figure out, how do I kind of use what God's given me to, to be generous in all kind of forms, in all kind of ways. So, we get a little twofer here. Bob, you mind going first? What kind of comes to mind as just some kind of practical tip they could wake up and think about executing tomorrow?
The thing that I've told most young people around me is make your vocation your vocation. And if you love what you do, you will never feel like you worked a day in your life. And when you are in flow with energy and you love what you are doing, part of that flow is giving back, right? Being in gratitude. And so that is what I share more than anything else.
That's powerful.
I like that as a, and I would argue who you do it with, when you say, also matters a lot to get into that state of flow. So that these relationships you guys have and having gratitude be a part of it. Pete, how about for you? What's a practical tip for somebody behind you on the journey?
Okay, so when we had the financial ability to give more financially, most people just write checks, right? They write checks. And I found that you really don't get happiness from that. You get no joy from writing checks. It's not really the giving that brings you joy. It's seeing the effect of that. Like, what impact did I have? And if the impact can be done with time, that's great. With money, that's great. With sharing resources, that's great. But I'd say, one, start paying attention to what gives you joy. And I would guarantee just writing checks to a big charitable organization without seeing the impact is not going to bring you joy. Number two, how do you do this? How do you get into this? I use what I call a low cost probe. What's it cost? You're not risking the barn on this. You're not writing a big check. You're not committing a month of your time. Commit some time, commit some money, and try something out and see how it feels. And assume it's not going to be a 10 out of a 10, because it won't be. It's a first trial. And then tweak it, and then tweak it, and then either make it work, right, or get rid of it and try something else. So I call that low-cost probe. And Bob and I have gone through lots of low-cost probes. I'd say 75% don't work.
Yeah.
I mean, don't be thinking you're going to try low-cost probe and you're going to be whoopee-doo. 3 out of 4 won't work. But you have to do that to find the 25% that does work. And so, like Jeff, getting to you took 3 failures, right, on average, right? I mean, and you have to sort of think of it that way. Yeah. So try 4 to get 1. So that would be my advice.
That's really good. That's the Jim Collins, bullets and then cannonballs, right?
Well,
his good to great. Yeah.
In halftime with the low cost probe, and then we had Tim DeBose on, who calls it start in miniature. Because it may not work. I had a guy. I love that, because I had a friend who got this big CEO job of an energy company. Go, hey man, we're at this nonprofit deal. He goes, I said, what are you involved in? And he lists off like 9 things with energy in the name.
Right.
And I go, what the heck? He goes, I got the job, and everybody came out of the woodwork. I didn't know how to say no. So he's like on 9 boards he can't get off of. It's like, how about show up at a meeting and see if you like it. That kind of deal before you commit too much. And I think that's a tendency, right, to kind of maybe jump in there. So I love both of those tips. So, hey, listen, guys, thanks so much for being with us. This has been awesome. And I know our community will appreciate it a great deal. Thank you, Bob and Pete.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Bob
You're
and
welcome.
Pete.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
As always, Jeff Rutt, and thank you, everybody, for joining us on this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Check out our website, YouTube channel, subscribe on your favorite platform, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.